Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, within the last few hours, the suspense has finally been broken, and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has now formally announced that the United Kingdom will be recognizing the state of Palestine, of course, and then Canada and Australia will also be recognizing Palestine. And this steals the thunder because Emmanuel Macron, the French president, was going to announced that French recognition of Palestine this week
We
at
need we,
the
we need
UN.
to point out that we're only covering this for the because we want to be very derisive towards these pygmies of the political world. Okay, it's no surprise, but it's emblematic of a huge problem. That's why we're doing it. These three major Europeans are not worth talking about anymore, other than ridicule. Go ahead.
Yes, that's very true. However, it's not insignificant. The United Kingdom has been intimately involved in the affairs of Palestine. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's about blood up to about here. Okay, there
exactly.
we go.
So everything, for starting from the seizure of Palestine from the Ottomans during World War One to the Balfour Declaration to the League of Nations mandate to the facilitation of a Jewish national home in the face of extreme Arab opposition. And the British kind of, they blew hot and cold. They changed their policy at various times, but nonetheless, they're absolute. This is the British, are absolutely within the history of Palestine. They're intimately involved, and so therefore, for Britain to now declare that he recognized the state of Palestine, and you think, well, what, the question was, well, what took you so long?
Well, I mean,
I mean,
also, George,
if you think about the partition plan, the first
okay.
partition plan. Now, when was that? You're going to go back to the 1930s because the 1930s when the Peel Commission recommended the partition of Palestine. So it's taken a long, long time for Great Britain
But
to
they had
arrive here.
in no, a much more capacity then to make it stick. Making the declaration now is meaningless because they don't have the capacity.
They don't have the capacity. No, that's very true. Um, and that's really gets to the whole the nub of the matter, which is true about France and it's true about Britain, Canada, Australia, which is that as long as the United States and Israel say we're not interested in that, and clearly Trump was quite annoyed when he met Keir Starmer at Chequers last week, and he actually even said in front of everyone, "I disagree with the Prime Minister on this." So there's very little that you can do. What's also a little dispiriting is that even among the Europeans there is considerable division. Macron was going to announce this, but Schmerz isn't coming to New York to address the UN General Assembly because he's got other things to be getting on with, and of course Germany absolutely is not going to recognize Palestine.
Well, yeah,
And
and it's second largest arms supplier to Israel in the world.
exactly, exactly, and even Georgia Maloney said she can't. She's against recognition of Palestine, and she's not going to show up for Macron's speech. She's only going to arrive a day afterwards. So that's Italy also gone from that. So without Italy and without Germany, you've just got Britain and France. So that's two European heavyweights that are already not in the mix. And then, of course, you've got other countries that have this, kind of love affair with Israel, including, of course, Hungary, that will absolutely always reject anything at all that's negative towards Israel. So there isn't a united front. And that, of course, makes things quite easy
What do
for
they have a
Trump.
united front on? Let's think.
Well, They have more.
And a very awkward silence there. Go ahead.
Well, they have more of a united front on Russia and Ukraine. I mean, obviously, it's not
More, more,
united. More.
more.
I mean, they don't have Hungary and Slovakia, but even Hungary, basically, they usually sign on to the sanctions
Yeah,
packages.
they want to be paid off. I'm
They want to be
sorry.
paid up, exactly. Hungary, Slovakia, they sign off on the sanctions packages. Um, but this one, since this is a big deal, not to have the two of the big European states on board is definitely a problem, and obviously a victory for the Trump administration. They wouldn't have had it even if Germany and Italy had signed on, but nonetheless they can point to, hey, the Europeans are not presenting a united front. Anyway, let's just take a quick look at Starmer. Not because we enjoy looking at Starmer, but we just want to take,
What happened to those teenage boys that rummaged his house? I'm not going to let it go. I'm not going to let it go. Okay. Sorry. Keep going, George.
Yes, it's one of those very, very strange stories that have just vanished from consciousness. So here he is,
Oh, God.
and let's listen to him a little bit.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. Ordinary people, Israeli and Palestinian, deserve to live in peace, to try to rebuild their lives free from violence and suffering. That's what the British people desperately want to see. Yet, almost 2 years after the barbaric attacks of October the 7th, hostages are still held by the terrorists of Hamas. Recent images show the hostages suffering and emaciated. Hamas even refused to release all the bodies of the dead. I have met British families of the hostages. I see the torture that they endure each and every day. Pain that strikes deep in people's hearts across Israel and here in the United Kingdom.
Every time I see this guy, I think of a mortician.
Yes, no, I think it's a very good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's interesting. He's talking about Hamas now. You've now made a major shift in policy and saying you're going to recognize the Palestinian state. Why aren't you talking about that? Why aren't you addressing that issue? Why, in other words, why is it an important to do it now? And why hasn't it been done for all these years? Why wasn't it done at the time
And
of
what
Oslo?
is, as you pointed out, I'm sorry for the interruption, as you pointed out, given the legacy of Britain's involvement in the Levant, I mean, does this stir him? Does this move him? No, it doesn't.
It doesn't, and that's why if you're going to make a speech to say, "Hey, we've now made this move, basically a significant historic shift in policy," it'd be kind of nice to explain why you made this move and maybe say something about history because your country was intimately involved in the history of Palestine. So
You've seen this whole clip. Did he say that the UK government is against the slave trade as well? I mean, more moral courage there.
yes,
Okay. My
yes.
point, I'm being very snide here, and because I'm very upset about this. Coming out and saying this now, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, no, that's true.
Hostages must be released immediately, and we will keep fighting to bring them home. Let's be frank. Hamas is a brutal terror organization. Our call for a genuine two-state solution is the exact opposite of their hateful vision. So we are clear.
Oh,
This
George.
solution is not a reward for Hamas because it means Hamas can have no future, no role in government, no role in security. We have already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas, and we will go further. I have directed work to sanction other Hamas figures in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, the man-made humanitarian crisis in Gaza reaches new depths. The Israeli government's relentless and increasing bombardment of Gaza, the offensive of recent weeks, the starvation and devastation are utterly intolerable. Tens of thousands have been killed, including thousands as they tried to collect food.
George, can you pause it for a sec, please? Well, why doesn't the UK break diplomatic relations with Israel? Why does the UK continue to send arms to Israel?
Right.
Okay, why does it have any kind of trade? Why doesn't the UK support a resolution to bar Israel from the General Assembly of the United Nations? There are many things you can do here, George.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very true. Um, and given all the hysteria emanating from London on Russia, um, basically nothing here at all. Um, and we'll come on. I want to talk a little bit in a minute about the EU has now imposed sanctions on Israel, which of course are a complete joke.
It's so far. Well,
Yeah,
before I forget, George, because I think it's really important, is and you saw the entire clip. Um, does he invoke the reality that British public opinion is dead set against the behavior of Israel in Gaza? Because he wouldn't be really saying this. I mean, when you look at these demonstrations here, I mean, this is meaningful stuff. Okay,
right.
this is George and I think even within the last week here. This is very organic,
Right.
okay? The Russophobia, well, that's a elite agenda. It's not grassroots,
Right.
okay?
Right.
This is grassroots, and oh my goodness, Starmer, he grabs the flag and runs in front of the parade. That's what it looks like to me.
Yes, no, that's right. I mean, it's a political thing, and particularly within the Labour Party, and so he has to somehow address it. But he has to qualify everything, and of course, the more you qualify, um, and by Hamas this and Hamas this, and rather than address the fundamental issue, which is, well, why haven't I mean, you're going back to the United Nations resolutions of, why haven't any of those United Nations resolutions been complied with? I mean, when Israel was admitted into the United Nations, Israel was obligated to comply with certain demands of the United Nations. That never happened. That was long before even anyone was talking about a Palestinian state. It was then the Palestinian refugee issues. Israel never did anything about any of that. So all of these years have gone by, and Britain has done nothing. Occasionally it sort of flaps his arms around uselessly, just as he's doing now. He's talking about Hamas, just Hamas this and Hamas that. You're not going to get an argument. No one's going to defend Hamas.
Yeah,
No one's arguing with you about that. But the question is, hey, you keep talking about Israel having a right to defend themselves, or Israel has a right to exist. Well, why don't the Palestinians have a right to exist, or they don't have a
yeah.
right to exist?
Right, and because their self-determination is never mentioned. They are objectified. They have no agency whatsoever. That for I like the way now I see him flapping his arms around.
Yes,
It's not a pleasant sight.
not a pleasant. Yes,
But he doesn't address any of those core issues
no,
whatsoever.
This death and destruction horrifies all of us. It must end. We have evacuated the first group of sick and injured children to the United Kingdom to be treated by the NHS. And we continue to increase our humanitarian support. But still, nowhere near enough aid is getting through. We call again on the Israeli government to lift the unacceptable restrictions at the border, stop these cruel tactics, and let the aid surge in. With the actions of Hamas, the Israeli government escalating the conflict, and settlement building being accelerated in the West Bank, the hope of a two-state solution is
He
fatal.
said he said the West Banks, but he doesn't have the courage to say occupied West Bank, does he?
No, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Of course, but he does bring up the West Bank, which of course is very interesting because um, the Israeli settlements, the rapid growth of Israeli settlements. So essentially, the amount of territory in the West Bank that Israel has taken over just since October the 7th is already greater than the territory of Gaza. I mean, in other words, that Israel has taken over. It's already greater than Gaza. In other words, he knows exactly what Israel is doing. Israel is making sure that there can be no state for Palestine. I mean, that's basically he knows this. That's what Israel is
He
doing.
knows it.
Yeah.
I would just as an aside, I'd be very, very curious how many people went through his speech before he gave it. He's an awful public speaker.
Terrible.
But I mean, every single word is parsed. It's so careful, isn't
Right.
it? Oh my goodness.
Right.
Look at it. He's terrified. He's this terrified man.
Right. Right. Yes. It's very interesting because he was a public prosecutor, and I guess as public prosecutors, they have a pretty easy time of it. Most they get convictions. I mean, most they only go to trial with cases that they're going to get a conviction. So you don't have to have great oratorical skills, courtroom skills that a defense lawyer has. So therefore you think, yeah, he's a terrible speaker, even though he's a professionally trained lawyer. He was the director of public prosecutions, the top prosecutor in the UK.
I really wish Summer would be cornered by George Galloway and watch them go at it. Okay.
Cannot let that light go out. That is why we are building consensus with leaders in the region and beyond around our framework for peace. This is a practical plan to bring people together behind a common vision and a series of steps, including the reform of the Palestinian Authority, that takes us from a ceasefire in Gaza to negotiations on
Nobody in Tel Aviv gives a hoot what he says. Nobody in Washington gives a hoot what he says. That's why he's an irrelevant
Right.
person.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's doing this out of fear, maybe deep down a little bit of shame. Who knows? Um, uh, and he's just a day late and a buck short. I mean,
Right.
so
Right. I wonder if Macron hadn't started this whole thing, whether he would have done this. Whether he just didn't want to fall behind Macron. So because up until that moment when Macron said, "Oh, we're gonna recognize Palestine," there'd been nothing. Nothing. There was no word at all from London that they wanted to do this.
hmm.
We will keep driving this forward. As part of this effort, I set out in July the terms upon which we would act in line with our manifesto to recognize Palestinian statehood. That moment has now arrived. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine.
Yeah, but George, what are the international geopolitical and legal how legal parameters? What has changed? I
I don't think
mean,
anything has changed.
yeah,
It's
that's why it's so hard to watch this. I mean,
Right. I don't think so. I mean, it's like if you recall, let's say in World War II, when you had all these governments that were recognized. Oh, you're the legal, legitimate government of Poland. They're all sitting in London and they all recognized as the legal, legitimate government of some country that really doesn't even exist. It's under
yes.
foreign occupation. And of course, none of those legal, legitimate governments, or very few of them, actually returned to power. Certainly, the Polish government living in London never returned to power. So it doesn't really mean a great deal. It's like a government
The
that
only
recognizes you, but
significant
you,
one
you have
was
no real
right.
existence.
The only significant one was de Gaulle.
Right. That's right. Yeah. And the goal was very quick. He moved into Paris very quickly
Very
because
quick.
otherwise he thought, yeah,
Well, you
I'll also
know
just
that
go on living in London.
Roosevelt didn't want that to
No,
happen.
he didn't. Absolutely.
Eisenhower let him do it, and it's really amazing because that was Eisenhower followed failed to follow a direct order, and he di- and he but every Ike was so popular among the
Right.
troops there was nothing Roosevelt could do about it, and he was pretty frail by then anyway.
Right.
But that's De Gaulle, yeah, he took the flag and
Right,
got
right, that's right.
right.
Exactly. That so he had to move quickly. But with others, that's it. They were just living in London. They were enjoyed a certain cachet. They attended dinner parties, were occasionally consulted, but most of the time, they had no real hope of returning. So it doesn't really mean a whole lot if you don't actually have some real existence somewhere. And that's so I don't think anything very much changes. I guess the only thing that changes is Israel, becomes more isolated.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's about it. I mean,
And the United States also, okay?
exactly. In the United States, get more. Get
And another thing that's important about this is that, and we can go back to that despicable character named Tony Blair. He has made it. He went public by saying he went along with Bush with the illegal invasion of Iraq because he didn't want Britain and the United States to be on the opposite side of issues. And so it was one of the motivating issue here. Here, this is unique. I mean, it's how important it is in the scheme of things, but this is in juxtaposition what the U.S. wants. Just as George said
right.
during that state dinner, I guess the only thing good about that dinner was the food because nothing else came out of it. So and this is a significant foreign policy difference where the UK is split from the United States.
Right. It's a significant foreign policy difference. What we don't know yet, and if we're pessimist, is that whether anything much comes out of it. But absolutely, this is a major split between Britain and the United States. I mean, there's always been differences on the subject of Israel. Britain, Britain has never been as wholeheartedly pro-Israel as the United States was. But this is really quite explicit. I mean, this is really just out in the open. I mean, they're being, Britain is openly being criticized by Marco Rubio. And I mean, Marco Rubio is suggesting that, well, that whatever Israel is now doing, it's only in response to what Keir Starmer is doing.
Oh,
If only Keir Starmer hadn't done this, gee,
oh my
with
God.
Israel wouldn't, wouldn't be pummeling Gaza City.
God. Marco Rubio, you must have mud for brain. Okay, for brains. Okay.
He does,
It's because what Keir Starmer think, that just negates 80 years of history, right?
right,
Or we can even go back to the Second World War with the
right.
collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Marco Rubio with mud for brains says no, it's the current sitting prime minister of the UK. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's right.
We recognized the state of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognize a Palestinian state also, a pledge to the Palestinian and Israeli people that there can be a better future.
Oh, so he comes out when it's impossible now.
Well, that's
I
right,
mean,
and
I think, wow, God,
but
there's
that's
a profile and courage. God.
but it's also, I mean, just going back to the question of what can change. I mean, nothing much can change
Oh.
because of the United States. Because let's say you try to make a move to invite Palestine to be a member of the United Nations. Boom, the United States vetoes it. You can't do it. The UN Security Council has to invite somebody to join the UN. If the UN Security Council doesn't do it, and that means there's a veto, then it's not going to happen. So that's already off the table. The Palestine will not be invited to join. They can have observer status, which is they've had that for years, but no more than that. the United States will not invite Palestine to join the United Nations. So that's already a problem. I guess you could have diplomatic relations. I don't know what that amounts. I mean, you could probably have an embassy, a Palestine embassy in London, or you could have, I don't know, a British embassy. Um, that's it. I don't know about that, but I mean, if you have a British embassy, say in Ramallah, the Israelis will hit it. I mean, if there's one building the Israelis are going to target, it's any European embassy
Well, and
that's
it's
built
not as if
in
it
West Bank.
hasn't. It's not as if it hasn't happened before.
That's right. So that's going to be already a problem whether you're going to have any kind of a diplomatic missions
Well, I mean,
Palestine.
The King David Hotel was a makeshift mission, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was yeah. That's right. Menachem Begin.
Yeah.
Menachem Begin. Yeah. He was involved in that. Even though then he lied about it afterwards, so saying, "Oh well, we gave a warning. We didn't intend to kill anybody." Yeah, right. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's funny, but for years and years, Menachem Begin was not allowed to visit the UK. It was only when he became prime minister that they finally relented. I mean, but up until that moment, which was 1977, he couldn't visit the UK. Um, so the British really, they know the scum that we're dealing with here. I mean, they have intimate knowledge of who we're dealing with here.
I know the strength of feeling that this conflict provoked. We have seen it on our streets, in our schools, in conversations we've had with friends and family. It has created division. Some have used it to stoke hatred and fear, but that solves nothing. Not only must we reject hate,
He shouldn't be
but
doing this. I'm sorry,
our
George.
hatred in all
Yeah,
its
those are that thing he does.
we
He
must
shouldn't be
rise
doing that. Okay.
united together in hope behind the peaceful future that we want to see. The release of the hostages, an end to the violence, an end to the suffering, and a shift back towards a two-state solution as the best hope for peace and security for all sides.
So there it is. That's the statement of the UK Prime Minister. Not exactly impressive, um, but then you'd have to ask, really, what's driving this? I mean, yes, obviously the short-term political gains, but is there something else? Is there?
Even that, George.
Yeah,
I
even
mean,
though, but I kind of wonder, and I'm just raising this question here: is that are they afraid of what Israel might do, and therefore they're kind of laying a kind of a marker down to try to stop Israel from doing what Israel, may do. I mean, in other words, they are really afraid that Israel may just go for it and just drive everybody out of Gaza, and that's
well,
why they're trying to somehow, make kind of one step ahead of Israel to stop Israel from doing it.
I don't think so at all. There's nothing, as long as Donald Trump is president of the United States, and we've got 3.5 more years to go, there's nothing going to stop the Israelis. Marco
Well, that's
Rubio's.
probably true, but they may think. I mean, you're right, but Macron and Starmer may think that this would
Well, I
stop.
mean, I think again, I think an element of cowardice because I think obviously that is in the cards, even most likely outcome, and they want to say, but we were on the other side. We had nothing. They're washing their hands. They're terrified of what we're about to see.
Right.
That's what I think. And also, I mentioned it earlier, is that domestically, this is something that is untenable. Okay, this is just people are just disgusted
Yep.
by what they
Yep.
see. So I
That's
think
right.
it's a combination of those.
Right.
He's reacting to the organic disgust of watching what we see in social media. And he wants to put down a marker and say, but we weren't part of that. We wanted them to have their own state. When
Right.
anyone that any serious observer would say, well, what state do you want to recognize?
Well, that's right, but well, obviously they don't have that. I mean, there is because they don't, there is no geographic
Oh,
entity called Palestine now. But that's why I'm thinking that for Starmer and Macron, they think, well, look, we've now recognized the state. Is Israel going to go ahead and crush a state that the Western powers, the key Western powers, have now recognized as a real existing state? Well, probably Israel will do
yes.
so. But they may think that by doing what they are doing, they're going to halt Israel.
The thing is that it seems, and this has been my position from the very beginning, and it will be familiar to you, is that people like Netanyahu and people that are even far more ideologically radical than Netanyahu. Netanyahu is just a political operator. I don't think he has any strong views. I mean, he probably hates Palestinians, obviously, but this is an opportunity, and they're going to see where it goes.
Right,
I mean,
right, right.
they're not getting any pushback. I mean, the amount of munitions that are being sent now. I mean, I don't know. The Responsible Statecraft had a very good article on how the administration is changing the rules of getting arms to Israel, going through different agencies.
Yeah,
They don't want any oversight at all. Okay.
right.
This is full blast. Okay. All the cylinders are firing right now. And they're going to continue what they're doing in Gaza. To what end? I don't know. What does victory mean? I don't know.
Right. No, I mean, I think so. Now, the I mean, what of course would be a very interesting issue, and I mean, it's just purely academic because I don't think it's not going to happen, is if Britain and France say, you know what, I think we have a responsibility to protect. We've now recognized the state of Palestine. We have recognized the Palestinian people, and now we have a responsibility to protect the Palestinian people. That could be the next step. It would be a logical
Well,
next.
I'm
It's not
glad
going to
you.
happen. I know it's not going to
No, no,
happen.
no, no, no. To be all fairness to you, you did couch it in it's an academic argument, but
Right,
that's what it is only.
right.
Okay, I it's George, that's like a tiny spark of light in all this darkness. What if I don't even think they would have the capacity to do it. What would
It
that
will be
mean?
very difficult. It will be, but on the other hand, um, no, I think it will be very difficult. I mean, at this stage,
I mean, it's not like, Suez in 56, okay?
no, it would be. But nonetheless, it would be very interesting because, of course, if Britain and France decided to launch a military mission to defend, I mean, let's say they're going to say
Okay, no, no, let's make it
protect, say,
more
the West
realistic.
Bank. Let's say that we're going to protect the West Bank because we're afraid of what Israel might do. We're going to preempt Israel. Would Israel be ready to start shooting at the British and the French?
Possibly and most likely. However, to go use your line of argument here, what what if Britain and France forcibly broke the blockade of Gaza? Just said we're going to
Right,
send a flotilla of ships and we're going to board. We're
right,
going to go ashore and we're going to set up our own,
right.
own aid centers and all that. I mean, that's really high stakes. I still think the Israelis would strike them. I do believe that.
I kind of agree with you. I think they would probably do so, but that would be very, very difficult because at that stage, the Americans would have a position on that. And would the Americans really support Israel hitting the British and the French? It's one thing, supporting Israel to hitting Iran, but start hitting the British and the French.
The problem is here, so not dealing with people of very high moral caliber. Okay, what you're talking about is something that should absolutely be done, and it would be heroic. It would be amazing. Okay,
Right.
but also let's extend it. I think this is an important argument. Let's say they did it, and let's say the Israelis felt powerless to react. Do Britain and France want to inherit Gaza?
No, they don't. But I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I don't think that would be the goal because
No,
there is.
once you get in, George, how do you get out?
But there is a plan. I mean, Macron and the Saudi Arabia, they came up with this, I don't know, huge plan for the future of Palestine. So they can say, hey, this is just our first step. We're getting aid into Gaza. Now we're just going to withdraw and let this plan work itself out. And that would involve the United Nations. It would involve international consortium. I mean, there's a whole all sorts of things. In other words, not the British and French wouldn't be running Gaza. It would be this some international consortium.
Jo- Absolutely interesting line of argument. And in some universe it would be plausible, but there's no backstory to this. Where is the real plan to break the blockade, stop the starvation, give humanitarian? That is a massive, massive
Massive.
endeavor.
Yeah,
And no, 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 no. We're just going to what's he doing? We're just going to recognize the
right,
state.
right.
Yeah, well, good job. I mean,
No, no,
I try
I
to
think
keep
that's
it
right. Yeah.
clean here, but it's really hard for me
No,
because what
that's
you're
right. Yeah.
saying, George, is that an international consortium, to meaningfully change the events on the ground there, that it's not inconceivable, but it is extremely unlikely because the only thing they're doing is we're waving, flapping their arms, as you said. That's
Right.
it. That's
Oh,
the and the omega of it.
I absolutely agree, and I think that's really the question. I mean, if this would be a significant development if this was the first step for an intervention, a British-French intervention, which I think may be quite popular. Something I think the British would find it quite popular. That would be a humanitarian intervention. We're just
Oh,
trying to get aid into Gaza. We're going to try and break the blockade. We're going to try and get aid into Gaza. Um, if the Israelis start shooting at us, we will shoot back. It's a high
just
risk strategy because then you have to then because obviously it's going to say, well, what are the Americans going to do? Because I don't think the Americans are just going to sit back and allow Israel to start shooting at the British and the French.
could you imagine the um I mean, we're talking about the use of hard power, but
Right,
can you imagine how that could be easily translated into soft power? I mean, who would have thought under given this scenario, there'd be people in the global South waving the Union Jack and the French flag. They would be doing that.
right,
They would do. I mean, that's the kind of impact this would have. Britain and France trying to redeem themselves for what they
right,
did
right.
in the wake of the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. That's
Yeah,
just that's gold. Okay, but
right,
they
right.
won't do it
No, they won't do
because
it.
they have no moral courage.
No, I agree
Oh,
with
and we're going to make another video. No, they just want to, they want to attack America to attack Iran because they hate Russia. This is the caliber of
right,
thinking.
right, right. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in the
Sorry,
next
sorry.
video. But yeah, I agree, and I think in the end, all that you've done, okay, you've made a stand, and you can say, hey, we're recognizing Palestine, even though it's a figment of people's imagination, even though, and this is even more serious, with every passing day, Israel is making sure there's less and less and less of Palestine that would be comprise this Palestinian state. Every single day. Tomorrow there'll be less of Palestine than there is of today.
But you see, Britain and France are making the same horrific mistake they made in the wake of the Treaty of Versailles. We recognize Poland. We recognize Czechoslovakia. We recognize these captive nations. Well, great. Thanks for the recognition. But when things went south, oh, what did your recognition add up to? Well, our sympathies,
Right.
as Germany and because the Soviet Union was denied access to the European security architecture, Eastern Europe was easy, easy prey. So this is the same as like, recognize a state that is viable.
Right.
Don't recognize it because you have a guilty conscience.
Right. 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 Yeah, no, I think it's right, and I think that um, it would be indeed, if you are going to do it, if you are going to step forward and say we recognize a Palestinian state, then you say, okay, now the next step is, hey, how about some security guarantees? What about officers? Right? You're offering now. You'll go to the Palestinians and say, we can offer you some security guarantees. We've now recognized you as a state as a and we now have a responsibility to the state that we have recognized. But if you don't do that, if you just say, well, we recognize you, but I'm afraid there's not a great deal we're going to do for you, then it is just sort of posturing.
It
uh,
it's so amazing because just the way you formulated it, you know what went flashed through my mind is this is how I remember European diplomats talking about geopolitics in the 70s and the 80s, okay? It was, a coherent worldview. It was actually a strategy. They had the resource, they had capacity, and then here we are in September 2025, and these pathetic characters trying to salvage their soul. I don't know. I mean, so late in the game, it's just kind of meaningless to me.
right,
If you're going to recognize Palestine, you have to give it capacity. It has to have security guaranteed. It has the whole 9 yards,
right,
George. Not just, what's your email address? We'll
right,
send
right. No, I
that's what it is. It's a
that's
what's your post box? Okay.
right, right, right. No, that's exactly right. And but without that, I think this is. Yeah, okay. So you've reinforced what we knew before, that Israel and the United States are becoming ever more isolated. But Israel is not really paying a high price for this. No, nor is the United States. They're not being made to pay a high price for this. So because
Yeah, there's
ultimately
an
you're not
enormous.
really following through. If you don't follow through, then yeah, then Israel says, "Hey, you scum, you anti-Semitic." They're just going to call you names, and that's what
Yeah,
Israel
yeah,
does.
yeah. But see, there's an enormous amount of ink spilt, and there's endless podcasts about the isolation of Israel, Israel, and no, Israel is not isolated as long as it's attached at the hip to the United States. There's no isolation. They will recalibrate, of course they will. Okay, they will have to. I mean, the pathetic reaction of the European Union, they're going to get tough with Israel. No, no, they're not. It's just verbiage, okay? But as long as the United States covers for Israel in every sense of the word, they will survive.
But this kind of does raise a very interesting question, which we talked about earlier today, which is, can Israel really go on living and being hated, really hated, by everybody? After all, Israel has always regarded itself as part of the European, the Western world.
Exactly.
And now you're hated by that. Everyone else, they've always known everyone else hates you. The rest of the world hates you, but you're still a part of the European Western world. If that European Western world turns against you, then really you are hated by everybody. So that's one thing. And you can say, oh, well, okay, they still got the United States, and they do have the United States, but is that sustainable? Is that because after all, the United States is changing? I mean, we've talked about this
Yes,
before. And
absolutely. Yeah.
younger people are indeed now, they don't have any of that emotional attachment to Israel that older generations had. So is it sustainable?
It's sustainable in the present.
Yeah,
Obviously, it is sustainable. And then, when we talk about the interim and then the longer term, those are terms we have to define. And I think it's impossible right now. Like, what can we say? If given that Netanyahu is in power, will probably stay in power, they will go down this path. This is I don't think I don't think they have the capacity to think long term. They're thinking how long Trump is going to be in office. And what this kind of stratagem is that create political facts on the ground and then we'll go from there.
right.
Okay? Because there is no real grand strategy. There is only this knowledge that the United States under Donald Trump is going to give them a green light to do anything, and I mean anything they want, okay? But George, you bring up a very serious question. Is it sustainable in the long term? I mean, politics change in America, as you pointed out, okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And I mean, and this whole issue with Charlie Kirk and things like that, there's a grassroots groundswell
No, I
for
mean that's
reevaluation
noted.
on the
Exactly.
party that's supposed to protect Israel.
Yeah, exactly, and exactly. It was a real issue with Charlie Kirk. I mean, I have to say, I didn't fully appreciate just how much pressure Charlie Kirk had come under because of the positions he was taking on Israel. So obviously, Israel and the powerful Jewish Zionist interest in the United States were very concerned about where Charlie Kirk was going on this issue. And that means the young people who had surrounded Charlie Kirk, where they were going on this issue. That's why they applied as much pressure as they did. And there is something indeed very, very bizarre about Netanyahu issuing a video saying Israel had nothing to do with his assassination. I mean, the very act of denial kind of is sort of making people start scratching your heads. You're denying something, everyone had thought before that that was just a loony conspiracy theory. But if Benjamin Netanyahu goes to all the trouble of issuing a video denying it, hey, maybe there's a little more to this conspiracy theory than we've given led to believe. I'm not saying that they did, but nonetheless, clearly the Charlie Kirk thing was becoming a very serious issue for the
Yeah, and
Israel
that would have
lobby.
been irrespective of him being shot. Okay, what George is saying was that was a ongoing struggle that Charlie Kirk was having, and we only became aware of it because of his
Yeah,
assassination.
yeah,
I am not saying they're connected. I am not, and we haven't said that here. But to finish off here is again, this is kind of we're falling into the fallacy of common sense. And what is going on now is not common sense because this is very pathological thinking. I mean, for Netanyahu and his government, and I've said this since the very beginning, is that they see an opportunity to a final solution to this problem, and they're going to do, and they are doing everything they can to get to that end. How they deal with it afterwards, or 50 years from now, there'll be a statue in Ramallah. Oh, but those poor Palestinians, man, that was tough on them, and everyone's going to wear keffiyehs and all that, and say, oh, it's kind of like, my father, he would buy a cowboy hat and a turquoise ring, oh, we like the Indians now, okay, just like, oh, should have liked them 100 years ago, okay,
right.
and I think that's part of this kind of thinking is that yes, it's bad, but we have to end this. There's something that has to come to an end, and we'll deal with the consequences later. Okay, and as long as we can keep the elites in America on our side, we can muddle through. That's how I think they think about it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way they think about it, and then they figure, if we can, nothing succeeds like success. If we can pull this off, and yes, will come under a lot of attack and a lot of criticisms, and it's going to be very painful for a while, but as I say, nothing succeeds like success. And I said, okay, but after 10, 20 years, people will have forgotten. I think that may be their calculation. I don't think that's going to work out that way, but I
I
agree with you. I
agree.
think
I,
that's
I
their
agree.
calculation.
Look, a lot of things can happen. There's a lot of shifts going on in the world right now. That's why it's so difficult to decipher what the Trump administration is trying to actually achieve here.
Right.
But no, I mean, to go full circle, I mean, Western leaders coming out calling for a two-state solution. I mean, all you can do is either laugh in their face or spit in it.
Yeah.
Your
It's,
choice.
and,
Yeah.
and that's really the problem. I mean, which is, hey, where have you been for the past 30 years? I mean, it's like,
I mean,
I mean,
this here, Starmer, do you see empathy there?
no, no,
I,
no, not really, no.
I mean,
But that's the thing. I
I,
mean, it's like, we're talking about the 1970s. That's the 1970s, the first time we're talking about the two-state solution. Then we had Oslo, the 1990s. Now, October 2025, finally, you're talking about a two-state solution. I mean, that's just, and and particularly as Israel has already said, we're not going to do a two states. We're not doing it. And the United States has just said, well, if Israel isn't doing it, then Israel isn't doing it. I mean, nothing to do with us. Hey, we just work here. So I mean, that's the U.S. view. So it really is. You've left it a little bloody late. I mean, it's like they should have done something 30 years ago. That was the moment when you could have made a difference.
Yeah, we live in an age where everything is memorialized.
Right, right.
Everything. Okay. And so this is going to be a rogues gallery of people that just had no moral fiber, no vision. And George came up, just spitballing here. George, he came up, well, maybe a right to protect. Well, dude, that's really smart, That's not even entering the minds of these people. You know why, George? Because they don't want to solve it. They want to absolve
Right. I
themselves.
agree. So and I think that's the point. I think Starmer's announcement would have had some resonance if he had ended. And now that we have recognized the state of Palestine, our responsibility to protect goes into effect, and we will indeed assume responsibility for the safety, security, and well-being of the Palestinian people. And then you say, okay, well now this is
And
indeed
then you know
consequential.
what, George? Next month he gets the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah, that's right. Is that okay? And then but Israel. I say, yeah, but Israel is a country of 9 million. We're a country population. I think is around 70 million now. With France, I think France is also around 70 million. We're kind of probably about 20 times the size of Israel. When Israel wants to go and fight with us, okay, have at it. I mean, so they said they
And, and,
could
and
do
how do you
that.
think, and Germany would be cowed into agreeing?
Right, right,
They would be. Okay, so you're on the side of the people committing genocide. I
right,
thought you guys got over that. Okay. I mean, the pressure would be overwhelming,
right.
overwhelming. Okay. So, no, as a good friend of mine said once, when you hire clowns, you get a circus. That's what we got.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, this is part of our wrap up on Sunday. I'm going to be out tomorrow, so we won't have a live stream tomorrow at 10 o'clock, but the week after, definitely back on schedule here.
Exactly.
George will proceed with his live stream on Tuesday.
Tuesday, exactly. 3 p.m. Eastern Time. We wish, obviously, Peter all the best tomorrow. And now we got the issue of the dogs, because the dogs are saying, yeah, well, I noticed Keir Starmer has said nothing about us and about the tip jar, which are the really key salient issues of our time, and he said nothing about it. So they have a very low opinion of the British Prime Minister, and their mind is absolutely focused. They're absolutely focused on what is important, and that is the tip jar and the abysmal state of it. So to get them into a better mood, look at they're very, very, very angry. So please, anything you've got, $100 bills, gold coins, bullion. They're like bullion. Everything into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And we're gonna put Buddy into a better mood. I mean, this is really lamentable. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.